We interviewed education law attorney Ann McColl about the Opportunity Scholarships, or Voucher program, in North Carolina.
So the North Carolina Association of Educators was very concerned about what this would mean to the system of public education and the use of taxpayer dollars for another system of education that isn't accountable to the public. We started talking to a lot of our colleagues who shared the same concern, and we started working with the North Carolina Justice Center, who represents the interests of students. We decided the approach for our lawsuit would be to make sure that the people of North Carolina were represented in this lawsuit. So we have 25 plaintiffs in the lawsuit. They include educators, they include parents, they include ministers, they include taxpayers. They include the breadth of North Carolina. And all of these people, as we talked to them and said, would you like to be a plaintiff in this lawsuit, shared with us their own feelings about what this would do to the system of education in North Carolina. And so we felt that by bringing to the court the interests of these people as taxpayers, it was a way for the people of North Carolina to speak on this issue of great importance to everyone. So we decided to file this lawsuit. At the same time, the North Carolina School Boards Association was talking to local boards of education, and they were arriving at the same issue. And so there were actually two different lawsuits that went on in tandem with each other. They ultimately were essentially combined by the court. And so at the end of the day, you have all of these interests. You have the School Boards Association, you have the individual local boards of education, you have taxpayers from across the state, from east to west. You have all of these people who are saying, we are deeply concerned that this new legislation of taking money that's given by taxpayers and putting it into a system that's non-accountable to anybody violates our Constitution. I think so. Some of this gets to understanding the role of the Constitution. So it's something I've given a lot of thought to over the years, that the Constitution is about protecting our most fundamental principles as a state. And so as a state, we have said that we care that when we have taxpayer dollars being used, that they are used for a public purpose. It's not for private gain. So we look to the Constitution to protect any time that we put taxpayer dollars into an initiative. That's the case here. We also have said in our Constitution that we care about non-discrimination. Now, our language is old. We talk about race, national origin, religion. We don't cover some of the things that we should, like sex and sexual orientation, but we do talk about non-discrimination. And so we would look to our Constitution to protect us when we're talking about students choosing school to go to with public taxpayer dollars. We also look to our Constitution for the fundamental right to education. And our Constitution is more clear than most in the country in protecting this right. And so we would expect that to mean that the state has an affirmative obligation to maintain, guard, protect that right to education. So that's what we wanted the court to do, is to look at opportunity scholarships and say that it violates those principles that we hold dear in this state. And instead, it said that it doesn't violate any of those concepts. And so that means that our Constitution is being given a significantly smaller role in the things that matter the most to us as North Carolinians. We've seen the system work. We've seen a process where the General Assembly has passed laws that were clearly unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court has responded in writing, supporting our views. So we were disappointed on this one. We're disappointed also because it means that the only way to move forward with this is changes at the General Assembly, and we don't see a General Assembly willing to take on those changes. So one of the things that people do say about vouchers is it gives parents a choice for their children. And I think it's important to talk about that issue of choice, because we've always respected the right of parents to make choices for their children. And in North Carolina, what that's meant is we've had essentially two systems. We've had a public education system that now includes charter schools, and we've had a private education system. And in that private education system, we've had private schools and homeschools. And so when we start thinking about the role of the state in maintaining, guarding, protecting the rights of children for education, I think we have to think about it in several ways. Anywhere our children are during the day, we want them to be safe. And so when we think about the laws that we have in place, I think we want to make sure that whether that child is in a home school or a private school, that they're safe. We also want to know that they are actually attending school. These are the bare minimums that we want for our children. So we can look at the system that we've got in place now, and quite honestly, we've got some challenges even with those basic things that we should be expecting. So in North Carolina, our system of laws is a highly deregulated system when we're talking about private education, because we've said parents get to make that choice to go into that private. So we start with a system that has very little. There are no background checks required of teachers in private schools. We have minimal requirements of safety in these settings. But now we're going to put taxpayer dollars into that. We're setting up a system where children, based on their religion, their race, their gender identity, all of these things, that they can be refused admittance, they can be kicked out, they can be treated differently, and we have absolutely no safeguards for that system. By contrast, our public schools have due process protections if we're talking about suspension or other disciplinary actions. Our schools have an anti-bullying policy that includes all of those things, so that our children are meant to feel and be safe when they are in school to learn. And the idea that we are sending taxpayer dollars into places where children don't get those basic protections is unconscionable. We just added vouchers on top of a system that's extremely deregulated. What this ultimately means is that the people of North Carolina have to become clear about what they care about in terms of education of the children of the state. They have to elect people who support those interests and get those laws changed.